Another problem. This steps on the toes of all the vested interests. They're expecting to make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of you, health management organizations, insurance companies, hospitals. If you own a boat, that thing is written into the budget of a boat builder down there in San Pedro. He's going to see you come in there someday and spend a lot of money. But if you do this for yourself, it'll happen. You will get well. There are 17 of us that I know of, and I know about 16 of them personally, who this day have immortal blood. Now, this is a rather dramatic claim. Let me tell you what it means. Toward the end of last year, there was a dark field microscopist. You know his name. He's world famous. He's the fellow who trains doctors all over the world to use this type of technology for diagnostic work, who invited a chap in who had been on one of these blood cleaners for about 6 months. And he said, let's look at your blood. So he pricked his finger, put that drop of blood on the bottom of the cover, C-O-V-E-R slip, put that cover slip on a microscope slide, and looked at it. And he said, you don't have any background clutter in your blood. Of course, they couldn't see viruses. This was a light microscope, and this had about 3,000 magnification, back eliminated. He said, just a minute, I must have done something wrong. So he stuck another finger, stuck another one. Then he went to the earlobe, made a slide, and said, what have you been doing? Anyone who has ever come to me, man, woman, or child, in the last 13 years, you can see the parasites, many of the germs, microbes, bacteria swimming around in the blood. You don't have any at all. And Mike told the other Mike, well, I've been on the blood cleaner. So this Dr. Mike said, well, give me some of those. I got to try them with patients of mine. I don't believe you. He did, and they worked. Now, in Colorado, blood is considered toxic waste, hazardous waste. It must be picked up and disposed of, incinerated, by registered toxic waste disposal people. He had thrown these 3 or 4 slides in this box underneath his laboratory table in the basement of his home. I've been there. Jane and I have met the gentleman. He looked down at this box about 27 days after he had drawn the blood. He wrote the date that he drew it, the name of the subject on the slide, put these slides on his microscope. That blood was still alive. The half-life of human blood on a non-sealed microscope slide underneath a slip is about 2.5 to 4 days maximum. 27 days had gone by, and the red cells were swimming in the plasma exactly the same as the minute he had drawn that blood earlier. It had not crenated. The fibrin reaction had not set in. It had evaporated around the edges. Now let's get to the point. 1 month after that, this is 50-some days later, those slides had still not been picked up by this chap. He put it on the slip. The blood had circled the wagons. There was about a 0.5 millimeter spot in the center where the cells had not evaporated. The slip had not been sealed. The ones he's working with now have been sealed with collodion, Vaseline, etc., so the moisture in the blood doesn't evaporate. But the people he has looked at, he's now decided to get into this. He's using the blood cleaners in his practice, have immortal blood. Now, what does this mean if the adversary is within? He might not be a man with a red tail and horns out there somewhere in the number 666. Just as the Holy Spirit dwells within this temple, so might the adversary, at least the aliens that have evolved with us over many, many moons, are in there, and you can see them if you go to a dark field microscopist. If you get rid of those, who knows what is going to happen? What happened to me? Well, we have pictures with Vince where I'm kind of shiny. Ivan has known me forever. And Wayne has known me forever. And you remember when I was heavier than? Oh, yes. It's not funny because I lived with this for a long, long time. I would have given anything to lose that weight.
You were in a wheelchair.
I was. I was in a wheelchair. I had been given up for dead. The doctors who came to see me, friends of mine who were MDs, who hadn't made a house call from Beverly Hills in 30 years, were coming down to my apartment in Costa Mesa saying, Bob, you better dispose of whatever you've got. You'll never walk again. I was given, well, so many tests. I brought Dr. Alexander Everett out here from Washington, paid his way, put him up in the Red Lion Hotel. He worked on me until he said, Bob, I'll have to go back now. There's nothing anyone can do for you. And I was in a wheelchair, and I still use that thing for swap meets. It's a little electric cart because I don't have any cartilage in my knees, but I'm sure as hell not dead. And my libido will just never you mind. Everything is working well again. Bless you, child. Go and sin as little as possible. So I'm here to share this information with you. I have nothing for sale. There are people who are selling things. I'm not one of them. Part of that is I believe God's work should be given freely. I expect to get my reward somewhere else. I hope I don't come back to this planet of painful endeavor. I have a lot of theories about this, and also the FDA has come to my door with drawn guns at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have been beaten up by the people who are supporting the pharmaceutical houses and don't want a $1.32 cure for AIDS. I've had a lot of adventures, and I'm going to share one more with you, and then we're going to open it to questions. We have several major problems. What I have told you tonight is so incredible that it's basically unbelievable. 5 years ago, when I would try to tell people, look, why don't you just try this? I will give you the equipment. I've built up about a dozen of these. They're free. Take them. Try them. Oh, no. If they worked any good, our doctors, the priesthood would have told us about it. You think that they don't know that a patient cured is a customer lost? Let's say this again. A patient cured is a customer lost. And if you take back your power, the power over all diseases, and this tells you how, you're out of their grasp. You're out of the grasp of the computers, etc. The other problem is the death wish. Have I got any more time, or are we up?
I was going to speak when you asked for the question.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll repeat them for the tape because I know the PA is kind of iffy. The second question, the problem, is the death wish. Now, these are not my numbers. They're the best psychologists, psychiatrists in America. They agree with Carl Simonton and Stephanie back years ago. You know who they were? They were the people who discovered the will to live was a tremendous factor in the cure of cancer. He was a radiologist in Fort Worth, Texas. He came out here, took some mind control classes, got into the metaphysics of disease, and totally changed his life. 85%, once more, of the population has a death wish. That death wish was planted in those people before they were 4.5 years old. They go something like this. My Sunday school teacher told me that man was originally walking with God in the Garden of Eden, and that Eve ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. It certainly wasn't an apple. And they were cast out of Eden, heaven. They had to work by the sweat of their brow, and they had to experience pain. And from then on, all mankind has been born under original sin. We have to suffer to get to heaven, where we get our just deserts. And the more we suffer, the more gold stars on our gluteus maximus. You've heard this version. It goes on and on and on. Remember the old Queen for a Day show? The woman who had 10 sick kids and a husband with a broken leg got the washing machine And the woman who had 8 sick kids and her husband was still barely able to drag himself to work, didn't get anything, were rewarded. Sympathy, martyrdom, suffering. That gets the most grease. Those are the squeakiest wheels. In 1963, I published on a device called the Lakowski Multiple Wave Oscillator. Wayne knows about it. A lot of you in here have seen it. I think you took it home for a few weeks. That did work on some cancer patients. It absolutely did. One very famous cancer patient was running a TV show at that time. At midnight, he drove his car on the Normandy entrance the wrong way onto the Hollywood freeway, and he killed 4 other people when he was in a headlong collision with the car coming in the opposite direction. And that was on my conscience, because I did not realize that once we took his crutch away from Bill, he had to commit suicide. Here's a man, another man, hypothetical, who's lying in bed, getting the best of care. His insurance is running out. George, what could you be getting out of having cancer? No, nothing. Well, what about your next door neighbor who died 6 months? Oh my goodness, he was getting close to 60. He knew the company was going to retire him. And good grief, if he'd gone back to work, he'd have to compete with all those younger engineers who were just out of college. And wow, his wife is bringing him chicken soup now. The kids are being polite. They're not screaming around him. In other words, these secondary gains create a phenomenon known as defeat the healer. We've had people on our IRB studies. I have a briefcase loaded with these things of cured cancer and AIDS patients who have dropped these machines in the washing machine accidentally out of their shirt pocket, who've let the dog chew them up, let the kids play with them. These are Freudian subjective ways of defeat the healer. We have had people deliberately not comply, which means you put this thing on your wrist after you have detoxed about 2 hours a day, 120 minutes a day, for about 3 weeks. You'll go back and surprise your doctor, but don't tell him what you've done, because I want to stay out of jail. The FDA will never approve this device, but if there's anyone in here who wants to play with this and get immensely better, we have a couple of guidelines that our legal department wishes to share with you. Again, we're on the bottom of page 4 of your paper. We're reading from the Code of Federal Regulations, not city, not county, not state, federal regulations. Book 21, Article 807.65, Subparts D, Exemptions, Paragraph D and F. Now, I bet there are health professionals in here who've never come across this, so listen up. Excludes and exempts from regulation licensed practitioners, including physicians, dentists, and optometrists, who manufacture or otherwise alter devices solely for use in their practice. Now, if you take one wire off this printed circuit board and then solder it back, what have you done to it? You've altered it. But listen up here. This is getting old hat, but how many of you people have looked at a menu in the last month to see what your restaurant was serving? Come on, let's see it. I hereby pronounce you researchers. Listen up, researchers. We're now in paragraph F